So I'm going to talk about something today that is very timely for you personally at this stage of your professional development. And that is putting together a manuscript that's publishable. So you've all done unique work, but unless you publish it, it really didn't happen. My mentor told me that many years ago, and I've kept that in mind. So part of professional development is communicating with your colleagues. And eventually you'll be writing research grants, and you'll be communicating with your colleagues who are your reviewers. Peer review in science is very important. So let me talk a little bit about how I mentor trainees come to me individually with issues about manuscript. First, I want to tell you that this sort of lighting here sort of fades out the screen. So if you can't see, please move forward. Just to tell you something about myself, I'm a research professor here in the Department of Community Health and Social Medicine. Yeah, officially. And I'm also emeritus professor at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. Emeritus means that I've been retired and given an honorary title that pays nothing. But is a lifetime title. So that's a little bit about me. Arrow up or down? Forward. No, not working. That's interesting.
Now it is.
Thank you. So, if you have the objective of writing a manuscript, you need to start thinking about where you would like to publish it. That's a critical item. When I was beginning in this profession, I chose journals that I thought would be willing to publish my junk. Not who the readership was, or anything like that, but just how could I get it in print anywhere? Very challenging early in your career. And so the clues are in your own manuscript. Look at the citations you've put in your own manuscript. Where were those citations published? That list of journals may be where you want to start. And consider the length of your manuscript. Usually in the instructions to authors, there will be a note about the number of words is the maximum that they will tolerate. So keep that in mind. Do you have more than one topic? This is really very interesting. One of my early submissions many years ago came back with a comment from an editor who said, "You have more than one manuscript here. This is too long, and it has 3 major subjects. Consider dividing it up and sending it back to me." Well, what an invitation. But it was very important lesson for me. So make a list of your journals, read the instructions of those particular journals, and they're all available online now. Look at the editorial advisory board members. They are very often going to be your reviewers. Are they people who are well known in your field? Also consider how specific the journal is. If your topic is cancer and you're submitting it to a cancer journal, you don't have to explain in the introduction how important cancer is in the field of health. that's going to be redundant to your readers. Don't waste the time. And look at the last 2 or 3, maybe 1 to 2 years of the contents of the journals that you intend to use. And by the way, Dr. Chamberlain and I will make these slides available to you. So, and eliminate predatory journals. Now, what are predatory journals? Well, let me get to that. But so rank your list of journals. Review your list and add plus and minus comments. And what I usually do is I make 2 columns and rank these journals. But consider time to publication. Usually in the introduction to authors, it will say something about the length of time for publication. I failed to look at this once when I sent a journal, an article to the Journal of American Public Health, and the average was 2.5 years for acceptance. Had I known that, that would not have been my target. Are there publication fees involved? Does the journal charge? If they accept your article, will they charge you to print it or to even put it online if it's an online journal? So also consider the fit. This is my item 3 here. Have there been topics similar to yours published by a particular journal in the last year? It indicates that the editor and the journal's board is interested in this topic, and they may be trying to corner articles on a particular focus. If you fit, that could be a real advantage. On the other hand, the editor might return a comment that we've had too many articles on pancreatic cancer in the last 2 years. We're sorry. The length of the article I mentioned. Don't send an article that is too long. Are there any special issues coming up? Now, occasionally journals will have a special issue that they plan to publish next year, and it's going to be on a particular topic. So when you put a cover letter on your manuscript, when you send it to the journal, you can, in a small paragraph, say, I'd be willing for you to delay the publication of my article if you plan to compile a special issue on my topic. So that can be a real advantage. And get advice from your mentors and other faculty and people that you know about their experience with various journals. Sometimes that can be a real help. This is going to be hard for you to read, and I didn't anticipate such a large room. But I've quoted here a few, in this case, an article from the Gavin, it was an email from Gavin Publishers. They're a very well-known predatory journal. The company publishes dozens of journals, and they were inviting me to be on the editorial board. Didn't even know who these folks were. But it turns out that recent Google search resulted in something about this publishing company, Gavin. The question I have is, would you trust this individual or group with your words? A startup website includes such remarks as these. Gavin Publishers is a newly launched international open access organization with all its journals are in the initial stages of development. And it publishes all kinds of manuscripts from the fields related to clinical biology, and medical especially. Although the article processing charges required for accepted manuscripts in order to manage the publication costs, but their charges are not listed. It really costs them almost nothing to publish something online, and they shouldn't be charging authors to do this. But predatory journals are in business to make money. So $75 million a year in the fake journal business, very robust. Investigative researchers, predominantly Dr. Beal's group, estimated that 420,000 articles were published in these journals in 2014 at an average price of $178. So researchers started by simply counting the number of journal titles published by 1,030 publishers on Dr. Beal's lists as of September 2014. So he did a study of these predatory journals. And his list included 416 single journal publishers, and from this list they identified 11,873 journal titles. Most of these publishers were based in developing countries in Asia, with India leading the pack at 27%. So I just warn you that journals are not all equal. Now, how do you personally make a publishing plan? Well, start doing it when you first conceive of an article. And use some sort of planning outline. I developed a paper proposal form many years ago for a variety of purposes. This is what it looks like, and then I'll break it down by each part. But I presented this slide just to show you it can go on one page. So the first step is at the top of this piece of paper, your name, the date that you're writing this down. And this will be the first version, but you can expect to have several versions of any paper proposal form. You can do this with colleagues, or you could do it for yourself. What's the title of the study? Well, all of you put a title of the study this afternoon up here on the screen, that your study. But that title is sometimes going to be too long. It's not going to attract readers. And you'll think of some other sort of working title that will be much more attractive. And so start developing a working title. You can put more than one. Who are the writing chair and authors? You're the writing chair if it's your paper. If it's going to be your manuscript, you're going to be the first author. But who are the other authors? So list them. And list who you're likely to acknowledge. Many of you worked with technical people in your project who aren't going to be authors, co-authors with you. But they provided a valuable service and they contributed to the manuscript, and they should be acknowledged. This is one of the most important aspects and reasons for developing a paper proposal to share with your co-authors and to those who are being acknowledged. So you develop this in draft form, version 1. You list all these things, the writing chair and the authors and your acknowledgments. and you send it by email to everybody mentioned, so that from the beginning, they know that they're going to share authorship. They also know that you're going to be the first author. And those who are acknowledged get to see that they, in fact, will get some credit. In the third step of this form, I put research questions. Well, you all have research questions embedded in your study, and this is where you put them. The potential journals, you might list 2 or 3. The wonderful thing here is that your co-authors may reply to your email and say, have you thought about this other journal? It's more likely to publish our work. So you get some input like that, particularly on that topic. And you should set a deadline for yourself. When do you expect, as the writing chair, to have a draft to circulate to your co-authors? And you can change this, and obviously that's why I suggest that you do it in pencil, because it takes longer to put articles together than many people expect. And what date do you plan to do the submission? If you have co-authors who are contributing intellectually to the paper, they're editing, they're helping you write it, it's going to take a longer period of time between the first draft and a finished manuscript. If you're the sole author, maybe you can do it in a week or 2, maybe just a weekend. And I've done this, but the more people you have involved, the more likely you will have an extended period of time. So I mentioned the research questions. What are the data needed for your paper? Well, this afternoon you described what data you're going to include. Anticipated analyses to be conducted. Well, what are you really doing? Is this a descriptive manuscript? Is this a hypothesis testing manuscript? Are you using inferential statistics? Are you using measures of central tendency? That needs to be described, because otherwise your co-authors are going to make suggestions that are way out of bounds for this particular manuscript. And are there any additional data that will be needed? Sometimes your co-authors will suggest additional data. And are there any other issues? This is usually the open-ended part at the end. And down at the bottom of the form, I did this for a clinical trial, the principal investigator's approval. So in a clinical trial, you have a lead investigator who's the PI, and generally speaking, nothing's going to be published out of this trial without that person's permission. So I put this down at the bottom, and worked out very well. So how do you fulfill the plan? Once you've developed a paper proposal, do it in pencil, and now obviously you're going to do it in Microsoft Word, so you can revise it. Show it to your mentor and ask for editing. That's what mentors are for. Mentors have published many papers. They all have advice to give, so use them for editing your first draft. So put it into a document, a good first draft, send to all of your co-authors, the helpers that you have not acknowledged, and gatekeepers. date it, and send it to everybody. And in the subject line of the email, put response requested and a date. So people will know, draft document, draft manuscript, reply by, and a date. This will get it on everyone's calendar. It also emphasizes that you have a timeline. And respond to all responses you get from your co-authors individually. Don't send to all. Make it a personal communication between you and the co-author on some issues. And then periodically send updates. So you'll update a manuscript proposal form several times. And you will include new things, maybe new authors. I had a colleague reply and say, "Bob, I don't have any time to work on this article. Please take my name off. Just acknowledge me." Fine, we did that. So revise this paper proposal form and send it, date it and send it to all, and then finish your manuscript. So what are the components that you want to put in the article? Share with your readers, what was your research question? Why did you do this study? Was it exploratory? Was it a descriptive study? Was it hypothesis driven? And what's the purpose of the research? Many authors neglect these questions, and readers want answers. So the methods, when and where, how is the study done? What materials were used? Who was included in the study? What was the eligibility? Was the tested hypothesis true or not? Or was the study inconclusive because of weaknesses? You need to share all of that with readers. And what are their perspectives for future research? So most papers end the discussion with this sort of analysis. So those are the various steps in organizing a manuscript. Most authors have prepared what I call dummy tables and figures before the study's even done. So maybe you can boil it down to a 2x2 table. You don't have the data for the cells, but you have the variables at the top, the independent variable and the dependent variable. In a simple way, you can start this, and this process will focus your manuscript. And from the beginning, before you do the study, you can usually write the methods section. Then, after you have the data, develop the results and write a discussion and write a clear conclusion. Then I suggest you go back and write the introduction, because you'll see in an introduction you should be, well, let me put it this way. An introduction is a sales document like an abstract. It's to bring readers into your manuscript and have them read it. So write a compelling introduction, good abstract, and compose a concise and descriptive title. That's what's going to be searched on. And you need to put the key words in the title. But make it as attractive and as short as possible. Select good keywords for indexing. Don't leave it up to the editor to put in your keywords. Just think, if I were searching for my article, what are the keywords I would use? So make a list of those and write your acknowledgments and write up the references. So tips from the reviewers, to me, have been to finalize the results in the discussion before writing the introduction, as I said. And this is because if the introduction is insufficient, how can you objectively demonstrate the scientific significance of your work in the introduction? And recognize people, acknowledge people who have contributed to your manuscript, but not to the extent that would justify authorship. For example, technical help and assistance in writing, proofreading. Probably the most important thing is to thank your funding agency or the agency giving you the grant for or a fellowship. So for our project, for our program, these are the words of acknowledgement that you should include. Support in part by a grant from the National Cancer Institute and the number of the grant, Cancer Epidemiology Education and Special Populations, City University of New York School of Medicine, Amr Solomon Principal Investigator. These are the words that you typically would use for a manuscript where you've had some support. Any questions? Yes, Joe.
One of the greatest sources of friction that exists in the laboratory is when more than one person thinks that they should be the first author of a paper. And so you seem to imply here that if you're the first person to fill out a Chamberlain form and send it around to everybody, that gives you some rights in some way that's independent of perhaps the contributions that were made. So one suggestion I would make is that before you go sending this around and making a lot of enemies because you've trampled on someone else's project, is to make sure that you've talked to your mentor, the head of the lab or whatever, and that at least he or she agrees that this is in fact your paper and you're the person that should be filling out the Chamberlain form,
Right.
as opposed to your lab mate down the bench. Because I think that team science has evolved to the point where there are very few single author papers, and it's actually pretty rare that there isn't some degree of ambiguity or perception about the order of authorship that's not in full agreement by the group that is being assembled.
Right. Yeah, great points. Very clearly, this sort of document, if well done, with a good preface like you explained, can protect the first author who may not yet be a faculty member. So I developed this as a result of an unfortunate incident where one of my trainees had finished the degree and left the institution, and the paper appeared in print without the trainee's name on it at all. And so this is a paper trail, and it's a public paper trail.
But again, first authorship can't be based on Hooke's.
That's right. It has to be based on a real scientific, a real contribution. Absolutely. You need to have a substantial understanding with all your co-authors of who is the first author. And often the squabbles are about placement of the other authors. The statistician says, I don't want to be, the middle author. I'm always the middle author. And there are traditions in various scientific fields where the prestigious placement is the last author. That's the senior person in the group. And that's very true in laboratory sciences. And it's been that way for as long as I can remember. I mentioned clinical trial reports, and I've participated in clinical trial reports that have had upwards of 25 authors. And in fact, some journals even refuse to publish the names of 25 authors and may just say the MD Anderson cohort group. And then way down in small print are all the authors. So there are a variety of ways to do this. I'm just bringing this up as a way for, especially for students, to handle issues that are potentially cause conflict. And I've got to say that some of the nastiest academic arguments occur over authorship of shared manuscripts. This is one way to clear all that up before the paper's written. Joan?
So the only thing I was going to add is the sooner you do this, the better. I think you just said it, but the sooner you clarify this, don't wait until you're about to submit it. Start right from the get-go on that critical decision.
Yeah.
I want to mention a couple of points here. We are giving you the opportunity to be the first author on your paper, and we agreed on this, and we talked about this during the orientation. But this does not mean that you're going to be the first author if you don't finish this before you graduate. All of us have good intentions, but we get busy with life and with other things, and you need to finish it. If you don't finish it, you don't have the right to be first author. I agree that students sometimes don't have the authority to say, I'm going to be the first author. But we are giving you the opportunity here, if you finish it during your program, to be the first author on this. This is academic life if you're going to continue in academia. This is not just student-mentor relationship. This could be fierce fighting even between faculty. And having this paper proposal is very important. Dr. Chamberlain and I were working with someone on a manuscript, and we had the paper proposal. And then that person changed the order of authorship, and she wanted to submit the paper without having a paper proposal that we turned back to. It would have been a different problem. It's always a problem. Journals, and Dr. Michalik is here, do not want to interfere in this. I'll make a few comments. Okay. Any other comments? Resubmission and backup journals. So Dr. Chamberlain talked about how you search for the journal, you do your search, you find your keywords for that journal, and you should have a list. I'm going to submit it to this journal, and if it's rejected, I'm going to submit to this journal, and then so on. Dr. Hartford had a very famous saying, I love it, your currency is your publications. So whatever you're going to be doing, and we are talking about career planning and career development, whether you're going to go and work for the government, NCI, academia, NGOs, your currency is your publication. And Joe?
It's critical to have a backup journal. I mean, I have something to say about this tomorrow as well, but 90% of all the public papers that are submitted to the journal Science are rejected. Almost none of them are ever published in Science. None. They don't, they just, once they've rejected it, they don't like to look at review. Now, 70% of the rejected papers end up publishing somewhere, but not Science. That's the statistic that's out there. So, yeah, I think that I'll talk about this a little bit. You know, it's okay to aim high as long as you're realistic about it. But you absolutely positively have to have a backup. Plan B, C, or D, maybe.
We know that the code of authorship in academia to some extent, or we claim that we know the code, but what's for the government? What about same? Okay.
I'd comment that typically when you send a manuscript and it goes and the editor sends it out for review, it's a blind review and the authors' names are removed. So don't let your dean say, I want to put my name on it because it'll help get it published. That absolutely won't happen.
Most of the journals I review don't take the names off.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, it doesn't help to have your dean's name on there anyway.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, and also I mentioned the predatory journals that always require publication costs, sometimes $1,000. But there are some legitimate journals that have publication charges. And if your department can't finance those publication charges, communicate with us. We might be able to help. But there are journals, particularly in psychology, that have page charges, and it's just a tradition in that field, it seems.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Chamberlain. Dr. Michaelis.